America built a car so extreme its own government eventually legislated it off the road. And it wasn't the power. It was something missing from inside the cabin. Something that cost a couple $100 in any other car and was physically impossible to install in this one. I went through 3 decades of Chrysler documents, interviews with the engineers who built it, and the homologation paperwork for all 5 generations. 8 liters, 10 cylinders, 0 electronic nannies. Everybody repeats the same line. The Viper died because nobody was buying it anymore. But the final run sold out completely. What killed it wasn't sitting on a dealer lot, it was sitting in a paragraph. To understand how a piece of paper could kill it, you first have to see what it was made of. And that starts in 1988. Bob Lutz was president of Chrysler. On weekends he drove a '65 Shelby Cobra, and every time he parked it he thought the same thing. Nobody builds cars like this anymore. Detroit was building minivans. Chrysler had just crawled out of a federal bailout. So the idea was absurd. He pitched it to Tom Gale, his head of design anyway, and Gale, instead of arguing, started sketching. On January 11th, 1989, Chrysler hauled that sketch, now a running concept, to the Detroit Auto Show with zero intention of ever building it. It was a centerpiece, stand decoration. The reaction went off script. People packed in around the car. Reporters were not asking about the design, they were asking when they could buy one. Chrysler walked into that show with a toy and walked out with a promise it never meant to make. Which brings up the first real obstacle. Lee Iacocca, the chairman, ran the numbers on turning that centerpiece into a streetcar, roughly $70 million. At a company still recovering from near collapse, that figure was practically an insult. He said no. It took him over a year to change his mind. He greenlit the program in May of 1990. By then, Roy Schoberg already had his team assembled. 85 engineers, hand-picked one at a time, pulled off other programs and stuck in a building of their own. They named themselves Team Viper. 85 people to develop an entire sports car, at a time when a normal Detroit program ran with hundreds. Which brings us to the thing that defined the whole car, the engine. The starting point was a V10 from the Ram pickup engine family. Cast iron block designed to pull trailers, not to rev. Good for validating a chassis and not much else. But Chrysler had a card nobody saw coming. At the time, it owned Lamborghini. So the block flew across the Atlantic to Modena, where a team led by Mauro Forghieri, a man who had spent years designing Formula One cars for Ferrari, redid the entire thing in aluminum. New heads, lighter pistons, bigger valves, beefed up crank. That's the fact half the internet still gets wrong. The Viper did not have a truck engine. It had an engine reworked by the people at Lamborghini, and what carried over from the original was barely more than the concept. February 1990, the first time the VM02 fired. 8 liters, 405 horsepower, over 600 newton meters of torque. No turbos, no supercharger, just displacement. Dick Winkles, the engineer the factory guys called Mr. V10, summed it up the way only somebody running on 2 years of bad sleep can. He said the car was just a place to put his engine. There's one piece missing here, and it's the one almost everybody tells backwards. Carroll Shelby. Shelby did not design the Viper. He did not run the program. Going by the project records, his technical contribution was minimal. Chrysler wanted him for what his name stood for. His most visible moment came in May of 1991, driving a pre-production car as the pace car at the Indianapolis 500. And there's a detail behind that almost nobody knows. That job originally belonged to the Dodge Stealth. But the Stealth was built in Japan. It was a rebodied Mitsubishi, and the UAW went ballistic. So Chrysler needed a genuinely American car with weeks to spare. The only one it had was not even finished. Sketch to showroom took about 36 months. What arrived in January of 1992 had 400 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, and not one single electronic aid. No ABS. no traction control, no real windows, and the exhaust exited out the sides, right where you had to swing your leg to get out. January 1992. The Viper lands in showrooms for about $50,000, call it $90,000 in today's money, and it shows up with a list of things it didn't have that no legal department would sign off on now. No ABS, no traction control, no stability control, no airbags, no exterior door handles. You reached inside and pulled a lever. No windows, just plastic side curtains you zipped into place when it started raining. No real roof, just an emergency top. And in 1992, you could not even order air conditioning, because it was not on the option sheet. What it did have: 400 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque, and a 6-speed manual. 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, quarter mile in 12.9 seconds. Top speed was electronically capped at 165 miles an hour, though period testing suggested there was plenty more underneath. But the number that really defines this car is not any of those. It is the temperature of the side pipes. They ran out under the doors right at calf height. After a hard run, those pipes climbed well past 400 degrees Celsius. So getting out of a Viper was a move you had to learn: twist your body, swing the leg wide, do not touch anything. The American press gave it a nickname, the calf roaster, and Chrysler eventually stuck a warning label on the sill, which, as one owner put it, you never read until it is too late. The reputation set fast. Motor Trend wrote that the Viper was not for the timid. It demanded respect, skill, and probably a good life insurance policy. Road and Track called it a raw, unfiltered experience that bordered on frightening in the wet. Neither of those lines was marketing copy. They were warnings, and it worked. 1992 saw 285 cars built, every one of them red. 1993 cleared 1,000. 1994 was the generation's peak at over 3,000. The same year power windows and air conditioning finally showed up on the options list. Generation 1 wrapped in 1995 at just under 7,000 cars, going by the most widely accepted production figures. Car number 1 went to Lee Iacocca, the same man who had said no. He kept it until the day he died, and yet by 1995, Team Viper already knew that Roadster had a ceiling. Literally. The roof. That was the problem Team Viper set out to solve in 1993. A Roadster with no structure up top flexes. So in 1996 came the GTS, a coupe that looked like the same car, but according to Chrysler, shared barely 10% of its parts with the RT10. Everything else was new. Tom Gale gave the roof a shape no marketing department would ever have dreamed up. 2 bulges, one over each seat. That wasn't styling. That was helmet clearance, lifted straight from the Shelby Daytona coupe of the 60s. And underneath, the Viper finally started behaving. Substantially stiffer chassis, retuned suspension, bigger brakes, 450 horsepower, nearly 500 pound-feet, and a top end north of 180 miles an hour. Airbags arrived with the coupe in 1996. ABS took until 2001, nearly a decade after the car launched. But none of that is what made this generation a legend. In 1996, Chrysler handed the car to Oreca, a French outfit, to build the race version. On paper, it was a ridiculous idea. A massive, naturally aspirated engine. No turbos, no sophisticated electronics, going up against factory Porsches and Ferraris. A sledgehammer entered in a surgeon's tournament. In 1998, the GTSR won its class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. In 1999, it won it again. In 2000, it won a third straight time, and finished 7th overall, ahead of prototypes purpose-built to go significantly faster than it could. This wasn't one lucky season. That same program took class titles in the FIA GT Championship and the American Le Mans Series, won the 24 Hours of Daytona outright in 2000, and racked up dozens of class wins across half the world. Olivier Beretta, the driver who was there for all 3 Le Mans victories, would look back on it years later as the challenge of turning a car that started way behind into a winner. And the colors it won in, blue with 2 white stripes, didn't come out of a focus group. Those are America's national racing colors, the same ones worn by the Cobras and GT40s that humiliated Ferrari in the 60s. The message was deliberate. That's where the road cars people pay fortunes for today come from. Around 100 homologation GTSR units, sold near $100,000 with race aero and a roll cage. And in 1999, the first ACR, American Club Racing. They stripped the air conditioning, the radio, the sound deadening, and the carpet. They added forged BBS wheels, adjustable Coney dampers, and race springs. This wasn't a luxury edition, it was a track car with plates. Gen 2 closed out in 2002 with a run called, apparently without irony, the final edition. 360 cars, red with white stripes, numbered plaque. And that's when Chrysler made a decision a lot of people still haven't forgiven. In 2003, the Viper came back with a new name, SRT-10. It wasn't a rogue project run by 85 engineers anymore. It was a product of the Street and Racing Technology division. And it came back as a convertible only. The coupe disappeared from the lineup until 2006, so for 3 years there was no double bubble, no round headlights, none of that 90s silhouette. What there was numbers. The V10 grew to 8.3 liters, 500 horsepower, and 525 pound-feet. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, 190 miles per hour flat out. The chassis picked up a huge amount of rigidity and dropped weight at the same time. The brakes were finally worthy of the engine. The exhaust still exited out the sides, but redesigned, with proper heat shielding. It barely burned you anymore, and that barely was the problem. The press said it flat out. The new Viper was quicker and dramatically easier to drive quickly, but something of the original edge had gone missing. Motor Trend wrote that the old car's wild, scary quality was gone. Part of the community took it as a betrayal, too polished, too well behaved. SRT responded with exactly the corporate line you would expect, that the Viper kept its essence while taking natural steps forward. But the numbers told a different story. Generation 2 had sold somewhere around 17,000 cars. Generation 3 closed out in 2006 at roughly 8,000. Less than half in a far healthier market. Chrysler had solved the wrong problem. Nobody was buying a Viper looking for comfort. So by 2008, the internal directive was the exact opposite. Bring back the fear and take it to Germany. The V10 grows one last time to 8.4 liters with new cylinder heads developed alongside McLaren performance technologies, more aggressive cams, and reworked exhaust manifolds. 600 horsepower, 560 pound-feet, 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, and a top end over 200 miles an hour. But the version that matters here is the ACR. They gave it an adjustable carbon fiber wing with 7 positions, a front splitter, dive planes under the headlights, and a rear diffuser. The result, roughly 1,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour, 10 times what a regular Viper made. Michelin Pilot Sport Cup tires, slicks with just enough tread to be legal. Brembo brakes. And inside the old recipe all over again. Carpet gone, sound deadening gone. Anything that added weight without doing a job, gone. It cost about $12,000 more than the standard coupe. In August of 2008, Chrysler took it to Germany to show you why. Dutch driver Tom Coronel ran the Nürburgring Nordschleife in 7 minutes, 22.1 seconds. Production streetcar record. On the circuit European manufacturers treat as their own backyard, with a car whose engine descended from a pickup truck block. And it didn't stop there. That year and the next, the ACR went record hunting across America at Laguna Seca, Virginia International Raceway, Mosport, Road America, Miller Motorsports Park. It stacked up close to 10 production car records. The German press described it as a shock to Europe's sports car establishment. It was, without argument, the best car team Viper had ever built. So logically, it should have sold thousands. In 2008, Connor Avenue turned out a little over 1,500 cars. In 2009, barely 650. The entire fourth generation didn't reach 3,000. The fastest car in Viper history was also the worst selling. And a few months later, with the Nürburgring record still hanging on the factory wall, Chrysler decided the Viper had reached the end. March 2010. Ralph Gilles, head of SRT, confirms what had been circulating for months. The Viper is done. The official reason was sales, and the need to cut. The numbers didn't leave much room to argue. In 2008, 1,172 Vipers sold in the United States. In 2009, 482. In 2010, 392. That same year, Chevrolet moved over 12,000 Corvettes. The Viper wasn't competing with the Corvette. It was competing with arithmetic. There was something bigger behind it. On April 30th, 2009, Chrysler had filed for bankruptcy. It came out 6 weeks later on the back of $8 billion from the U.S. Treasury and an alliance with Fiat. A company that just survived on public money doesn't build a $100,000 convertible that sells 400 units a year. And there was already another shadow on the horizon. A federal standard called FMVSS 226 was going to require side curtain airbags on every passenger vehicle starting in 2012. Nobody said it out loud in 2010. Hang on to that number. The send-off was a run of 500 cars called the Final Edition. The last one rolled out of Connor Avenue on July 2nd, 2010. No ceremony, no speeches, 150 people out of work and a plant with the lights off. But the Viper wasn't finished talking. On September 14th, 2011, with the car discontinued for over a year, SRT brought an ACR back to the Nürburgring. Dominic Farnbacher put it around in 7 minutes, 12.13 seconds. New production streetcar record. A dead car had just beaten all of Europe. Somebody in Auburn Hills took notes. September 2012. Connor Avenue comes back to life and nearly 150 workers return to the same line they had shut down 2 years earlier. A lot of them were the same people who had built Generation 4. Several described it as coming home. That April, the car had been revealed at the New York Auto Show under a name that confused everybody. SRT Viper. No Dodge badge anywhere, because SRT was being trialed as a standalone brand. That experiment lasted until 2015, when FCA reversed it and gave the car its last name back. What was underneath was the best Viper ever built. No argument. 8.4 liters, 640 horsepower, 600 pound-feet, aluminum chassis, carbon fiber hood and roof. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3.5 seconds. Top end past 200 miles per hour. Inside, leather, Alcantara, a touchscreen. And for the first time in 21 years, stability control and traction control is standard, with 5 modes. The last one shut everything off completely, in case you were feeling nostalgic for 1992. Every car was still assembled by hand in Detroit, 15 to 20 hours apiece, and the crew signed the interior before it left. And then came the 2016 ACR, which is where this whole story peaks. A carbon fiber wing just over 6 feet wide, front splitter, 4 dive planes, a diffuser with 6 strakes, brake cooling ducts. With the Extreme Aero package, more than 1,700 pounds of downforce at speed. Brembo carbon ceramic brakes. Kumho tires developed for this car and nothing else. Then they sent it out to hunt stopwatches. 13 production car records on American circuits according to SRT's own records. Laguna Seca in 1 minute 28.65 seconds with Randy Pobst. Rode Atlanta in 1 minute 26.54 seconds. Virginia International Raceway in 2 minutes 40.02 seconds. Grattan, Gingerman, Nelson Ledges, Motorsport Ranch, Pittsburgh. Most of those laps were set by Chris Winkler, not some hired hotshoe, but an SRT engineer. A $120,000 car taking records off machines that cost 3 and 4 times as much. Now look at the sales. 2013, 591 cars. 2014, 760, the generation's best year. FCA had talked about 1,500 a year. In 2014, they cut the price by $15,000 in one move, close to a panic response. In 2015, they sold 676, fewer than before the cut. 2016 was 626. 2017 was 585. This is where almost everybody ends the story. The Viper died because nobody wanted it. Except the 5 special editions Dodge released as a send-off, 186 cars total, including a run of 100 painted blue with white stripes as a nod to Le Mans. Sold out in a matter of months, every one. The last Viper sold out before it was built, and they killed it anyway. Because the problem was never the customers. It's called FMVSS 226, ejection mitigation. It's a federal standard requiring that in a rollover or a side impact, the occupant's head doesn't exit through the window. There's essentially one way to meet it, a curtain airbag that drops from the roof, running the full length of the side glass. The rule phased in starting in 2013. Full compliance for every new vehicle took effect September 1st, 2017. The Viper had nowhere to put that airbag. Its doors had no upper window frame. The coupe's roof was a removable carbon fiber panel. There was no fixed structure above your head to anchor a curtain to, and creating one meant redesigning the doors, the roof, and the chassis from scratch. Hundreds of millions of dollars spread across 600 cars a year. Tim Kuniskis, head of Dodge, explained it later with an image that says everything. To comply, they'd have had to mount the airbag right above your ear. In a car where you sit that low, it couldn't be done. And here's the detail that dismantles the internet's version of events. The Viper met every other safety standard. It met emissions requirements, all 8.5 liters of it. This wasn't the environmentalists, and it wasn't the accountants. On February 10, 2017, Dodge announced the date of death. On August 16th, the last car came off the line at Connor Avenue, this time with a ceremony, plaques, and workers taking photos. 2 weeks later, the plant closed for good. In 2018, they started tearing it down. 25 years, 5 generations, around 31,500 cars, going by the most widely accepted production figures. And today, a 2016 ACR that's stickered at $120,000 trades for more than double that at auction. The Viper was killed by a paragraph no buyer ever read. And that's the uncomfortable part. The decision wasn't made on a dealer lot. It was made in an office. But if you think weak sales are what condemns a car in Detroit, there's one case that blows that theory apart. Chevrolet had the best-selling car in America. Millions of them. A nameplate that had been on the road for 60 years. And they killed that one too. That story's right here.